Hey there, lovely people! Welcome back to A Story Study Saturday. I'm Sammi, and I'm a writer who likes to learn about writing through reading and share what I learned with you. This week I am talking about Dust and Crown by Havelah McLat. And Havelah is a follower of this channel. She commented on a lot of my videos. It was so great, and now we are Bookstagram friends, and I am able to talk about her most recent release. I did read it long before it came out, but life happened. And now we are getting a video on it. So it is out now and available for you to read and purchase and have if that is something that you're interested in. Let's get into a quick summary. In a fairy community based around a fairy dust tree that produces dust when a rightful ruler is in charge, a party is attacked and the king is killed. A new fairy is chosen to be the rightful next ruler. But after the attack, she loses her memory and has to discover who she is and if she wants to save the Dust and Crown. This is an Anastasia retelling in a YA format, so let's get into my thoughts on this one. It is really refreshing to have a story that has a directive towards developing friendship and building a friendship over a romantic plot, because I feel like there's so many other stories that could be done in the same structure that would really force pacing of a relationship that would feel moderately uncomfortable for the amount of time that the female main character is cognizant of who she is, and putting that into a friendship space makes it a lot less unsettling than, like, say, somebody trying to romance a girl who has no idea who she is. It's also got a really interesting take on the real world adjacentness to this fantasy story, because, like, the fairies travel through Europe and they're just flying around and, like, you know the landmarks that they're looking at, but their concept of the world and the part of the world that they're interacting with is so vastly different from what our frame of reference is for those same things. Like, if a fairy sees the Eiffel Tower, it's going to be a totally different experience than if a human sees the Eiffel Tower. The lore for how the fairies world works is really well explained, and it's explained in a way that the characters that are explaining it are actually explaining something that is in reference to real life as it's going on in the moment for those characters. And it's not like info dumping on the reader so you know what's going on. It's like, oh, well, she doesn't have her memories. She doesn't know what's going on. So, like, now we know. And it's done in a way that's, like, really effective, even from the other character's perspective, even from Dimitri's perspective. The information is introduced in a way that makes sense for the actual plot of the story, because it's really easy when Nastia doesn't know anything and she lost her memories from this attack. But also, from Dimitri's perspective, he's got some questions that, like, an older fairy can answer, or, like, he's in new situations and there's a whole new, like, setup of things because somebody who's not the rightful leader is in charge of the fairy dust tree. And having somebody else explain to him what's going on is also done in a really effective manner to get the reader to understand what's going on. Some things that I think could be improved on this story: I think the writing style or the narration style is a little bit younger than it seems like it should be for the adjacent age of fairy time to human time that we're given for Nastia, that we're told she's, like, about 18 years old. And I didn't have any problems with the writing style until I was told that she was about 18 years old, because I was reading this as a YA story. YA is anywhere from, like, 12 to 19 years old, depending on how you're perceiving it. I guess 12 would be more so in the middle grade area. But until I was told explicitly that she was 18, I didn't have any problem with the narration style. It just felt younger than an 18-year-old should be navigating the world with, which is not necessarily, like, a thing so much as it is just a personal preference of, I feel like if your main character is 18, your target reader should be around that age range, just because they're the ones who are relating to it. And I think if she was, like, 14 to 17 years old, somewhere in there, it wouldn't feel as, or even if we just weren't given, like, an age of reference, it wouldn't feel as, like, young of a writing style, because I didn't have any concerns about it. I was like, oh yeah, we're doing a storybook, like, we're doing this kind of narration. It's a YA book. And just being told that she was 18, it was a little bit jarring for me. I also think that there were moments for several of the side characters that the dialogue felt a little stiff and awkward, that it made it so all of these different side characters kind of spoke in the same stiff, not necessarily conversational manner that made them all sort of blur together, and I would have liked for more of them to stand out. There's two characters that I know stood out because we spent the most time with them, and it was the older woman fairy that Anastasia spent time in her cabin with, and then the older man fairy that Dimitri was paired up with in their like separate times of exploring things and navigating this tree situation. Those two characters I think had the strongest dialogue, but a lot of the other side characters, I don't think they had enough of a unique voice. Specifically, like everybody that they saw in France, I don't have any, like there was one, pretty sure they spoke to the queen of that dust community, and I don't remember there being much of a difference between like her and the dressmaker's dialogue. So I kind of wish that there was a little bit more voice to the dialogue. I also think reading this as somebody who's not familiar with the source material, I've never seen Anastasia, I've never read Anastasia. I don't know if Anastasia is I don't know enough about Anastasia as a story to know what I don't know about it. And I think that there's a little bit that is relying on knowing the source material more than is necessary. Like, this is a totally different world. They're fairies. They're not human beings. I don't know. Like, is it a historical story? I don't know. So I'm not in the realm of having a reference to a lot of things. I was left with a lot of questions that were like very small questions that I think came from an ignorance of the source material more than it came from like a lack of understanding of what was on the page. Just sort of like questions of what physically happened just now and what caused an emotional change to the characters. I'm being vague because I don't want to say something that's like too specific to people who know the Anastasia story and then like accidentally spoil something for this book. I do think a lot of those answers were just found in familiarity with the source material that I just didn't have. So some things that I think we can learn from this book are to keep in mind that YA has like a really wide range of tones, writing styles, age range of readers, and that kind of stuff. I think this book is a really fantastic book for like 14-year-olds. I think it's written really well for like that range, like 12 to 15-ish in there, because the writing style feels very young in that young set. But because the character is supposed to be 18, it feels like a little bit disconnected. And keeping that in mind, I don't really want a 14-year-old to be in charge of the government, but if we didn't have the reference point of how many human years she would be in real life, then I think it would be totally fine and manageable. Because as a 14-year-old reader, I think there would be no questions about like, yeah, she can totally do it, you know? We don't really need to know because the rate that time passes for fairies is so different than the rate that time passes for humans in their personal growth. It doesn't really matter how old they would be in human ages because their society is going to be so different in terms of how old you have to be to do things. And I think we can also learn that when you're adapting something, it's safe to assume that a lot of your audience is going to know the source material, but it's also safe to assume that some of them won't. And having some guideposts in there for people who don't know the source material is going to be super helpful, and probably helpful for people who know the source material as well. It's not like people are going to go out and readdress Anastasia. I don't know, reread, rewatch, re-engage with Anastasia before picking up this book. They'll probably just be in a realm of like, I know I like that kind of story, so I'll read this one. And having like a few more guideposts on what's happening would really make this so much stronger. I think it was great. I had a great time reading it. I read with a very critical eye, and I read to learn how to be better at reading and how to help other people be better at writing. I read to learn how to be better at writing and how to help other people be better at writing. So I think if I wasn't who I am, I would have not had any real critiques about this because I would have just been on it for the ride. So if you would like to get a copy of Dust and Crown, links are in the description. If you've made it this far in the video, please leave a comment to just tell Havelah how great she is. Whether you've read her book or not, just like pop a compliment because that's so great. But that is all that I've got for you this time, so I will see you in the next video.